الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
قاف والقرآن المجيد بل عجبوا أن جاءهم منذر منهم فقال الكافرون هذا شيء عجيب أإذا متنا وكنا ترابا ذلك رجع بعيد قد علمنا ما تنقص الأرض منهم وعندنا كتاب حفيظ بل كذبوا بالحق لما جاءهم فهم في أمر مريج أفلم ينظروا إلى السماء فوقهم كيف بنيناها وزيناها وما لها من فروج والأرض مددناها وألقينا فيها رواسي وأنبتنا فيها من كل زوج بهيج تبصرة وذكرى لكل عبد منيب ونزلنا من السماء ماء مباركا فأنبتنا به جنات وحب الحصيد والنخل باسقات لها طلع نضيد رزقا للعباد وأحيينا به بلدة ميتا كذلك الخروج كذبت قبلهم قوم نوح وأصحاب الرس وثمود وعاد وفرعون وإخوان لوط وأصحاب الأيكة وقوم تبع كل كذب الرسل فحق وعيد أفعينا بالخلق الأول بل هم في لبس من خلق جديد ولقد خلقنا الإنسان ونعلم ما توسوس به نفسه ونحن أقرب إليه من حبل الوريد إذ يتلقى المتلقيان عن اليمين وعن الشمال قعيد ما يلفظ من قول إلا لديه رقيب عتيد وجاءت سكرة الموت بالحق ذلك ما كنت منه تحيد ونفخ في الصور ذلك يوم الوعيد وجاءت كل نفس معها سائق وشهيد لقد كنت في غفلة من هذا فكشفنا عنك غطاءك فبصرك اليوم حديد وقال قرينه هذا ما لدي عتيد ألقيا في جهنم كل كفار عنيد مناع للخير معتد مريب الذي جعل مع الله إلها آخر فألقياه في العذاب الشديد قال قرينه ربنا ما أطغيته ولكن كان في ضلال بعيد قال لا تختصموا لدي وقد
A lot of us aspire, including myself, to be able to read the Quran in Arabic. And that's one of the reasons why I promote the Kalam app, because it teaches you the Arabic of the Quran and the Hadith specifically so you can understand the words of Allah, so you can read the Quran and understand what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying. You say the word and it lets you know if you got it right or wrong. And if you got it wrong, it'll correct you, tell you how to say it properly, and have you practice until you get it right.
إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح.
This kind of active memory recall is one of the best methods of studying, and the app truly helps you hold on to the words so you remember them or you remember what they mean. And when you read the Quran, you could read it and say, I actually know what that means. And as someone who's learning Arabic right now, it's one of the best feelings when I can listen to an ayah being recited and be like, I actually understand that. So if you guys want to learn the Arabic of the Quran and even the Hadith of the Prophet, peace be upon him, then download the Kalam app. The link will be down below and you can get an extended free trial using code RAMI. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to another stream. Welcome back to the channel. And Ramadan Mubarak. We just entered the sacred holy month of Ramadan. People might contest the day. My local masjid didn't come out with an official sighting of the moon yet. They said that they have not seen the moon today and therefore they can't say anything. So I'm just going to follow what everyone else has been saying and fast tomorrow, inshallah. Which is a bit tough because I have an exam tomorrow. But it's Ramadan, so inshallah Allah will put barakah in me writing the exam. But regardless, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us success, accept all our fasts, and allow us to exit the month of Ramadan better than when we entered it. Allahumma ameen. Someone's saying, I'm playing it safe. I'll just wait for the local sighting in Toronto. That's fine. I think playing it safe means fasting tomorrow. Because even if you ended up fasting an extra day, so what? You know, but you don't want to be behind just in case they were like, oh yeah, it was actually yesterday. But Allahu Alam. Because it's not that they saw the moon and they were like, did I say sun before? Because if I did, I'm dumb. It's not like they saw the moon and then they were like, it's not Ramadan. They didn't see the moon at all. They just couldn't see it. So I'd rather be safe and fast. But regardless, we recently, Sneako went live with Dr. Jiang, who has become very popular for his takes on political science, the deep state, his takes on Israel and how their genocide has basically been one giant human sacrifice. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us and punish the evildoers. So we're gonna go through it, inshallah, and listen in on the discussion. I haven't seen it. I've watched one clip, and let's see where this takes us, inshallah. Bismillah.
I've been wanting to talk to you for a while. I'm super excited for this interview.
Yeah, no, thanks for inviting me.
There's a little bit of an echo. I can hear myself playing back.
Right. Yeah, no, I just went on YouTube to, yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, I've been watching so many of your lectures. I don't know if you've seen it. I sent you some of the content. I've been taking notes from I have 40 pages of notes. It feels like I'm back in school, you know, and I dropped out of college. So I really appreciate the work you do. First off, I'm not trying to overly glaze, but I really do love your lectures a lot.
I don't know Sneako, but I could tell from his tweets that he really, really looks up to Jiang. He really appreciates him because he put out like an encyclopedia of a tweet. One tweet, a giant freaking compendium of notes that he took from this guy's lectures. And I've never seen him do that before. So he seems to be very, very interested in his work. Not gonna lie, Sneako looks mad weird with blonde hair. I don't think he looks weird. I think it looks pretty good on him, to be honest. I don't think it's weird. But to each their own. To each their own.
Well, thanks so much. Yeah.
Are you in Beijing right now?
No, I'm actually in Hainan, which is like Hawaii here in China. I'm here with my kids.
Is Dr. Jiang mogging right now? Is that what you're saying? Is he mogging?
So that's why, you know, there's a C to my back.
Okay. So yeah, how much time do you have today? Because I could take this conversation in many different directions.
Yeah, I mean, I have as much time as you need.
That's very nice. 2 hours though. 2 hours. I'm not going blonde ever in my life, bro. I'm not going blonde. I don't think I could rock blonde. Can you imagine blonde hair with this black beard, bro? I'd look like a terrible tie-dye accident.
I'm free all morning.
Okay, great. So
I think I just heard my wife yell, exactly. Or, oh no, she's talking to someone else, but she would have seconded what I said.
Obviously, you know, the lectures that I sought to give you a little bit of context, I think I've sat through at least 10 or 11, and I've seen some of your interviews. I started off with your lecture on Pax Judaica and eschatology. And then the most recent one I saw was about the Islamic Golden Age, which I loved that one. And it was
W Islamic Golden Age. I've been saying this forever. The Golden Age of Islam is a gold mine for us to use, to prove, to tell people, and use it as a proof of concept that Islam works as a governmental system. It works as a governmental system, a religion-backed state. It works. It's been done before, and we prospered as people. And then Europe enlightened themselves based on our work from the Golden Age of Islam.
super interesting to see your take as I'm a Muslim revert myself. I reverted 3 years ago. And so seeing your perspective, and also it's super funny to see like you wanted to go to Mecca, but they only allow Muslims in. You know, you don't have a Muslim name.
Yeah, I found that out in Saudi Arabia, yeah.
That's
Yeah, so
you gotta accept Islam.
I've been, I'm probably gonna go again. Ramadan's coming up, but
Right.
also, yeah, I love the lecture you did on the faith of evil, empire of evil. I think you really detailed Frankism well, because Candace Owens brought up Frankism a couple months ago.
What's
and I
Frankism?
don't think that she explained it in the way that people wanted her to explain it. So there was a lot of back and forth about her, her interpretation.
Interesting.
Not to yap forever. I'm just trying to give you a little bit of context about what I know.
Right.
But I just want to start off with your life. So what? Also, how do I pronounce your name? I've been calling you Professor Jiang on YouTube. I don't know how you prefer to go by.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's fine, yeah.
Okay.
So Jiang is my last name and Xueqian is my first name, but here in China, people just refer to each other by their last name. So you just call me Professor Jiang, that's fine.
Okay, but we looked up the Google Translate. Your first name is Xueqian.
Xueqian.
That's cool. I guess it's a bad time to be alive because apparently YouTube has been down. Some servers are down. So started working when I turned off ad block, of course. If you got ad block on, you're not allowed to watch YouTube.
Xueqian Jiang. Okay, Xueqian Jiang. Perfect. So yeah, very nice to meet you. My name's Sneako. Do you know anything about my content at all, or you don't really know much?
Yeah, you're an anti-Semitic, right? I don't know.
No, I'm not a. Well, first we can even go into that. What you detailed well is how the real Semitic people, they actually go back to the Palestinians. Most of the Semitic people are Khazarian. People like Netanyahu and these people, they actually don't have traces to being Semitic at all. And that's probably why that word is being used so much, is to make people think that they deserve that homeland.
That's right. That's exactly right.
So I didn't know about the Khazarian people, and I'm 12% Ashkenazi, so I have that. So
He always mentions that, bro, every single time. Also, he should just ask a question, man. Just ask the guy a question, get the conversation going.
Ashkenazi is Khazarian, correct?
Yeah, basically, yes.
Okay, and yeah, I guess I do get called that. You probably get called anti-septic too.
Septic.
No, I actually get called a Mossad agent a lot.
I saw that.
Really weird.
That's crazy.
I've been called a CCP agent. I've been called a CIA agent. I've been called Mossad agent.
CCP is believable. I mean, the guy's from China, but Mossad agent's kind of that's a hard assertion right there.
Yeah. So I'm agent for everyone.
Yeah, I've heard every single one, but I don't know why that allegation has any sort of basis, because based off of your lectures, you don't have any sort of bias besides your own interpretation of the world, right? You said things, you've been very critical of communism and how the isms, I love that lecture, about how all the isms are control mechanisms, right? Communism was subverted by Trotsky and by Karl Marx, and Karl Marx was actually backed by transnational capitalists. So it's like, why would capitalists associate with the communists? Because, okay, well, they both serve the transnational banks.
Sneako just casually flexing his knowledge. I know this stuff too.
So, yeah, so I don't think, I don't understand why. Well, you probably get these allegations because you detail things in a way that's convincing a lot of people. You've had a very big rise as of late.
Yeah. So I think there are certain factors at play. I mean, the first big factor is I came out of nowhere, right? So I sort of blew up last June when Trump launched Midnight Hammer and there's this war in Iran, and I was really one of the few individuals to predict that there'd be a war between the United States and Iran. So that's one factor. So another factor is that I seem to know a lot about secret societies, about transnational capital, about intelligence organizations, about how evil and power works in this world. And so I think it's just human nature, human instinct to believe that I'm being fed this information by the elite or by powers that be, because they want this information out there.
I don't want to make this unwatchable for you guys, because once you hear it, you can't unhear it, but I'm sure you guys already heard it. Sneako needs to mute his mic because I don't know what that white noise is in the background, but it makes it a tough watch. You guys know audio is more important than video, because people can look at something that's not too clear, but they can't listen to that. They can't listen to white noise.
In order to manipulate people in a certain way. So I think that's just a natural response. And then the third thing is that people don't really listen to all my lectures. They just focus on one lecture or one interview. And if you just do that, then I come across as favoring one side. So for example, people accuse me of being a Mossad agent because I believe that Israel will be the new superpower in the Middle East. Mm-hmm. And what I argue is that this war against Iran that's coming up, we're building up towards this massive conflict between the United States and Iran. A lot of it is to create Pax Judaica, right? A lot of it is to make Israel the de facto power in the Middle East. And people hear that and they think I'm like advocating for this. They think that think that it's a great thing that we have Pax Judaica, and I'm not. I make predictions, I do analysis, and you listen to different lectures, then you will see that I make a lot of criticisms about Israel, that I think that Pax Judaica is a very evil thing. But again, people just focus in their own on one lecture or one interview, and that makes them think that I am biased.
Right. I think that was the first one I saw was Pax Judaica. And when you look back at your lectures, like, I have to give you credit. I was very critical of Trump's invasion of Venezuela and the kidnapping of Maduro. And now you can see that BRICS posted, and some people are speculating that Venezuela has now sent $2 to $3 billion worth of oil directly to Israel. And I got a lot of pushback from the right wing, and they said, okay, Monroe Doctrine, it's American empire. You predicted that America would invade Venezuela, I think in 2024.
Wow.
I actually didn't do that.
Wow.
I didn't predict that America would invade Venezuela. Actually, Venezuela was a surprise to me. What I did predict in 2024 was that there'd be a civil war in America. And I think that actually this Venezuela, this Monroe Doctrine, this kidnapping of Maduro is actually part of a larger civil war. So
that's
the idea of the civil war is that there are two major factions that have emerged in America. The first major faction are the transnational capital, the global financial elite, and they've been in power since the Clinton years, right? And they were responsible for the 2008 great financial crisis. And because they're in power in Washington, D.C., they're able to warp the political system in order to benefit the financial system. And that's why in 2008, after they collapsed the global economy, Obama still bailed them out. And
bro, this guy's chat is so toxic. Like, if I didn't know any better, I'd say they hate him. If you guys ever spoke to me that way, I might just leave the internet, man.
And you go back to the GameStop scandal during the Biden years, and that was just blatant insider trading, but they got away with it because they control the politicians in Washington, D.C. So that's the first major faction. But another faction that's emerging is Silicon Valley. So these are the tech oligarchs, people like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel.
That's so interesting. I didn't know that. I didn't know that amongst the top 1%, amongst the ultra rich, you had two different factions that are like trying to outbid each other. You have like the left and the right for the rich people, and then the Democrats are not propagating, but they are supporting and accepting the support of their rich people, and then the Republicans like Donald Trump are accepting the support and supporting the right-sided, right-leaning ultra rich like Elon Musk. That the fact that I never noticed that, that's insane. That's crazy. That's such an interesting catch.
The ones backing Trump.
And it's so basic too. Like, thank God I don't do this for a living, because if I was a political commentator and that came as a shock to me, I would boot up myself off the internet, to be honest.
And what they want to do is they want to take the resource of the American government and invest it in AI surveillance state, right? So that's why you see all this data centers being built, because the end goal is to create a nation in which everyone has digital ID, in which everything is digital currency, and then everything that you do online will be monitored and controlled by an AI system. Okay.
Wow. Okay. Wow. So they really want. I always believed that they would never leave security in the hands of AI, but that's exactly their plan. Apparently, according to his theory, they're going to shift everything to be AI based, and so you are validated. Your data is analyzed by AI. You're validated by AI. I guess currencies transfer through AI. I don't know how that would work, how the currency stuff would work, but everything else, it makes sense. Electronic IDs that are put through a system, and oh my God, they can remove the full workforce, except for when you need agents on the ground for physical, to either instill fear or to physically remove someone or arrest someone or whatever it is. Aside from that, everything's going to be done by AI. That's crazy. You're not going to be allowed in America because a robot looks at your ID, looks at you, goes through your Twitter, and says, "Get the hell out of here, dog. You're not coming in this country."
So these are the two.
And by the way, each president might be able to reconfigure the AI to match their specific agendas. For example, obviously this is before any AI overtake or overseeing, but Trump has became more strict with the border. So border officers don't allow people in based on their comments about Trump. Can you believe that? Can you imagine that? People, including professionals, are not allowed in America because they'll say something like, "I don't like Trump," or something basic like that. So imagine now if AI scrubs through your digital ID, which is linked to your Twitter and your social media, which, by the way, you're not going to be able to have social media unless you have an electronic ID that you upload to it. And everything's going to be linked. And then you're going to be censored. You're going to be watched. You're going to be thrown in jail. And you're going to be putting your name, your face, your identity on every tweet that you make, that you like, that you repost. All right.
Competing visions for America. But in order to build the surveillance state, in order to build the Pax Judaica, what they need to do is destroy the old system, right? And that's why you're seeing what's happening in Venezuela. The rise of the Monroe Doctrine, the Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine. That's why you're seeing gold, silver, Bitcoin being artificially inflated, then crashing, right? Because then you're destroying the economy that way. That's also why you're also seeing ICE in Minnesota, because you're trying to create a Palantir police state. They're trying to provoke as much violence as possible to justify the use of Palantir.
Oh, that's really next level. That's really next level. They're putting ICE in Minnesota, which they know is open carry, so they will have violence. People will get offed just to get people used to having police force, just to make it common news. That is next level.
So this conflict right now in America between the old deep state and new deep state, between the financial elite and the tech oligarchs, is, I think, what best explains what's happening in America and around the world today.
Okay, so the old elites are being outdone by the tech oligarchs. That is the current state we're in. They're battling right now, and it seems like the tech masters and the tech owners and the tech companies and the ultra rich are going to win. ICE is, I don't remember what it stands for, but they're the officers that try and grab illegal immigrants and deport them from the country, but they commit a lot of violence, and they also unnecessarily detain and sometimes imprison actual U.S. citizens, despite them having valid identification.
Theory that nuclear energy and the investment, I see that billionaires like Peter Thiel are investing into nuclear energy so that we don't have to rely upon oil as much anymore. Do you believe that theory?
Yeah, absolutely. So the problem with AI is that it consumes a lot of energy. So you need different energy sources. The problem with oil is that it's very expensive to transport around, and that it's also prone to geopolitical conflicts, right? So there's a war in the Middle East. Where are you going to get your oil from, right?
Yeah.
So
Good
not
point.
only are they looking at nuclear energy, but they're also looking at geothermal energy. That's why Greenland is important, right? Because Greenland is a cold place. So you can have like data centers in Greenland. It won't be that expensive to cool because it's already a cold climate, and there's geothermal energy. So it'll be pretty cost effective to power, okay? So they're thinking about data centers, like where can we place the data centers and where would it be efficient and cheap to power these data centers?
Oh my God. I don't want to pause as often as I am, but this is insane. The whole reason he wanted Greenland was to be able to put energy centers basically there. And the problem with these geothermal centers is that they overheat and you have to spend money on cooling them, but Greenland is naturally colder and the climate is, oh my God. That is crazy. Now, and now at least there's a method to Trump's madness. At least now it's starting to make sense. But everything he's doing is in the hands of, I mean, in the Epstein's files, it says that Jared Kushner is the one who's really pulling the strings behind the scene. He's pro-Israeli, and he's clearly a very smart guy. He's a very smart man, and he's working from behind the scenes. So this is insane. Because if this does go through, we will have an AI-based society where AI is basically governing the day-to-day transactions, the day-to-day immigration and emigration, and overseeing all of your social media activity. And that's going to be run by people who are essentially swearing allegiance to Israel. So it's going to really be run by Israel. And that's the whole like Pax Judaica thing that they've been talking about. And Greenland is a key to that. And apparently ICE is now playing a role to normalize violence and having police force in the street. This is next level. This stuff is crazy.
Yeah, and you could see the arrogance from, which you often call hubris. I think that's a great definition.
Can you react to Professor Jiang and why he won't ever convert to Islam? I would love to. I didn't know he even spoke about this. So is it in this video or is it send me the video, inshallah, because I would love to react to it. I'd also love to speak to him, inshallah, someday.
Arrogance of American empire. We've been the global empire, Americans, for so long that when we see Trump invade Venezuela and kidnap the president, or when they talks about taking over Greenland, Americans get super excited because they're like, yes, American empire. But that hubris distracts from the greater picture and what's really going on behind the scenes.
Right. Well, there's a big issue in that the people are the ones who are financing this empire, right? It's these poor people who have to go to war to defend this empire. It's the middle class that's paying the taxes for the military-industrial complex, which is one of the most corrupt organizations in the world.
That's very
true. It's the people who have to deal with these illegal immigrants that are coming into America because of the empire, right? Look, the reality is that people don't want to leave their homes. If their homes are being destroyed by climate change or by the war on terror, then they have no choice but to go to a new place. So you look at Europe, which has been overrun by refugees, right? Well, why? Because where are these refugees from? They're from Afghanistan, they're from Iraq, they're from Syria, they're from Libya, which is all nations that America went in to destroy for no particular reason. Mm-hmm.
Well, there was a particular reason, but they won't say they won't actually say what the true reason is.
That's the cost of empire. So you think it's a great thing to have an empire, but the vast majority of people, 99% of people within the empire, are the ones who are enslaved by it, the ones exploited by it, the ones who are financing it in order to benefit a certain elite.
Yeah, I want to ask
how
what happened.
They had it all ready, and then when after 9/11 happened, you have the rise of basically the American security state. You have the rise of the American empire. So, if you go to Washington, D.C. back in 1999, if you go to the suburbs, it was pretty empty. You go to the suburbs today, right? Virginia, Fairfax County, they're all mansions. Okay, so this is the benefit of the war on terror. It basically funded the American security state. And it made a lot of people very wealthy. I was in Afghanistan in 2006, so I was part of the war on terror. I was working for the United Nations, and my God, everyone was getting filthy rich. I was a low-level UN official, but look, I saw people walking home with millions of dollars in cash.
Wow.
They would literally go to the UN, pay like payoff is, okay? And then they begin like, you know, these bundles of hundreds of dollars of bills in American cash. They were like billions of dollars, like plain loads of billions of dollars, which just went missing. We now know that the American soldiers were there partly to protect the poppy trade, in order to make sure that opium went to the Sackler family, which of course caused the opioid epidemic that killed thousands of Americans, right? So the war on terror, yeah, I mean, so you just look at the evidence, and you just look at what's suspicious about 9/11, and then you look at who benefits from 9/11, and you look at how things have transpired after 9/11, then you are forced to conclude that it was probably an inside job by the security state.
That's why he cut it out, because he started asking about that event.
And the argument is that after the fall of the Soviet Union, Americans no longer wanted to be involved overseas. They didn't care about what happened outside the world, because this great threat, this communist menace, it was erased. Now we just be friends around the world, cut back the security state, limit the Pentagon budget, and so they engineered 9/11 in order to justify the military-industrial complex, which is what really controls America. Yeah.
I can't watch the original on Kick because they Sneako cut out certain parts for YouTube, because you can say things on Kick that you can't say on YouTube. So if I watch the Kick original and they say something crazy, this is live. I can't do anything about it. So I'm going to play it safe, inshallah.
Right, and so
also, this is 2 hours long. Like, you really want it to be longer, bro?
You are predicting that Trump was going to go to war with Iran, even though he campaigned on no new wars. And you can see the Trump MAGA base, they've switched their opinions on so much, right? Trump said on the Truth Social that he does not support anybody who wants the release of the Epstein files. Ben Shapiro, one of the biggest supporters, said that the Epstein files don't exist. Now he's blaming Steve Bannon. And so you can see a lot of his supporters, insane. Although they were promised these things during the campaign, they now have accepted his change in rhetoric, right? Especially the war in Iran, which is the biggest one. And it is probably, do you believe that the war in Iran is the catalyst to start World War III or the end times?
I do. Yeah. I do.
This is crazy because he agrees with my position now. And my position comes from Dr. Kareem Abu Zaid. I mentioned him before, and I'm reading his book. I have it open on my laptop right now, which you guys can't see because it's a different operating system. But I have it open on my laptop. I'm going to go through it, I think 200 to 300 pages worth, and I'm going to make a full video on the end times. It starts with, most likely, we'll start with Iran and Israel going to war. And he gives his justification for that. And then how that will bring the end of times. Because after that, the caliphate's established in Jerusalem. Imam Mahdi comes out eventually after multiple khalifas. Imam Mahdi comes out, the Euphrates River dries up, and then Dajjal comes, and then Jesus ﷺ comes, and so on and so forth. The Dajjal being the false Messiah. The Messiah the Jews are actually expecting is the false Messiah, and then the real Messiah, Jesus ﷺ, will come down and kill the Antichrist, and then Ya'juj and everything comes after that. Might take a while to work on the video, but I'm working on it. But it's crazy. He believes the same thing. I'm going to rewind so you guys can hear it again, and then we'll continue.
Especially the war in Iran, which is the biggest one. And it is probably, do you believe that the war in Iran is the catalyst to start World War III or the end times?
I do. Yeah. I do. And I think that that's why they do it. I think that the people in the Pentagon know that this war in Iran, it'll be a disaster because America is not ready for a war. Mm-hmm. To fight a war, you need, first of all, you need manufacturing capacity, right? You need to be able to produce bullets and tanks and planes. And America offshored its manufacturing capacity to China. There's no way that China is going to produce tanks and bullets for the American military, right?
There's no way. That is the dumbest thing. They offsourced the creation of their military weapons, right? Their military artillery, their weaponry, their tanks, they offsourced it to China. To China? There's no way. There's no way. Imagine offsourcing something you need to survive to your worst enemy. And imagine your worst enemy has to give you the pills you need to survive every single day. Your worst enemy, really? They're gonna come and give you pills every single day when you need it? And then you're going to go to war with them. They're going to still be giving you pills. That's so dumb of them. Jazakallah khair for the super chat. La ajri. Jazakallah khair. May Allah bless you immensely and accept your fasting. Allahumma ameen. You said Prof made a video saying that the Prophet ﷺ was a pagan Arab who was inspired by the Jews to start a monotheistic religion. May Allah guide him. Yes, I mean, may Allah guide him. Obviously, he's going to say this because he's not a Muslim. And I don't think he believes in any particular religion. So he's going to look at the world through a naturalistic lens, which is a part of political science as well. It's a part of any secular science, really. You don't look at any world and say, oh, this person was inspired by God, or this happened because of God. People, secular studies don't operate like that. Inshallah, if he accepts Islam, then he will change his position, and he will say that he was inspired by Allah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent him the revelation, and that's why he did everything he did and said what he said, and that he called the Jews to come worship the one true God and to obey him and follow his religion, as prophesied in their text as well. But all that in time, inshallah.
Right, okay, so that's issue number one, manufacturing capacity. Number two is political will. And the reality is that American people don't understand why America would start a war in Iran. And Americans have no ill feelings towards Iranians, okay? It's not like Afghanistan and Iraq, where Americans were gaslighted into believing that Saddam Hussein was responsible for 9/11, where Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. You could make a case against Iraq and Saddam Hussein. It's impossible for you to make a case against Iran because Iranians have been extremely cooperative. In fact, you would argue that they got out of their way to be as peaceful as possible with America, because America assassinated their top general in the Middle East, General Soleimani, which is a declaration of war. Basically, it's an act of war when you kill an ambassador or an envoy of a nation.
He changed his view later on because he didn't know much about Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that much only as a historical figure. If you watch his videos, I didn't know that, but I did watch one of his lectures on Islam. And he did say things that were incorrect. People corrected him in his comments, and people got mad at him. But I just think he's a bit ignorant on Islam and what we believe. But he did make some pretty basic blunders. Like he said that one of the beliefs in Islam is that Allah is everywhere. We don't believe that. We don't believe Allah is everywhere and in everything. We only believe that Allah is everywhere in His knowledge, meaning His knowledge encompasses everything and every place and all that. But He's not in every location, So he made a few blunders, but I just think he needs to study Islam and some of the basics and more of the history, and then he'll maybe have a better understanding of our theology.
Right, but the Iranians never retaliated, they never responded really. And then you have Operation Midnight Hammer. You have all these acts of provocation, right? And the Iranians have shown tremendous restraint, and the Iranians have tried every way in order to negotiate a peace treaty, a new nuclear deal with Trump. And Trump has always rebuffed them, and Trump has always tried to provoke them. So Americans don't really understand what the problem here is, right? So the rally of the nation for a war against Iran will be really hard. I think they'll have problems with a draft, right? Because you'll need a draft in order to send troops to Iran, and which Americans are gonna go fight this war, right? And then remember, the biggest problem.
That's a good question. Let's be real. If someone said, strap your boots, you're going to Iran, are you really going to go? Are you really going to go fight Iran for America, for Israel? I don't think so. Also, someone asked if they should follow their local masjid or Saudi Arabia for the moon sighting. Valid difference of opinion. I would follow your local masjid because they're going to be praying Taraweeh based on the sighting locally, most likely. But maybe your masjid will be following Saudi. So just go to your local masjid. I just checked mine, and I'm in, I guess, close enough to Toronto. For the brother who asked, who said he's in Toronto, my local masjid said that they're going to fast on February 19, which is Thursday, instead of tomorrow. So I might not fast tomorrow according to what my masjid is doing. But go to your local masjid and find out, and go based on what they say.
Problem in Vietnam was fragging. I'm not sure if you heard the term fragging, but fragging is where soldiers kill their own officers because their officers were idiotic, were incompetent, or sent them to their deaths because the officers wanted to rise up in the ranks. So fragging was a huge problem in Vietnam. So basically, troop morale. Okay, you're gonna have a problem with troop morale if you fight this war in Iran. The third problem is just logistics, which is to say that Iran is 3 times the size of Iraq, and Iran is mountainous, right? So Iraq was a desert, which makes it ideal for an air campaign. And this war was wrapped up in 2 weeks' time. There's nothing the Iraqis could do about it, and also because of sanctions.
You said 3 weeks in your lecture that they bragged that it was 3 weeks. To
2 or 3 weeks. Yeah. Right. So 2 or 3 weeks. Right. Yeah, but I mean, from Pentagon perspective, if we did that in Iraq, we can do the same thing in Iran, and so like if you just look at the reporting, they're looking at about a weeks-long campaign in order to decapitate the regime, and I'm like, that's gonna take years, man, to decapitate the regime, but they don't really understand that. So logistics will be a huge problem. And if you just look at the American military doctrine, it's shock and awe, right? It's like we go in, we blow things up, and then we leave. But like to fight a war in Iran, you need to go in, establish 4 operating bases, control logistics, win over the population, and then slowly advance against Tehran. And that's what the Russians do, and that's what the Russians are doing very well in Ukraine. Americans don't do that. Americans are like, go in, do it on the cheap, and get out, and let the Israelis or whoever take care of the rest. So logistics is not going to work out for the Americans. And number 4 is Russia is going to get involved, right? Because like let's just assume that Americans go in and take over Iraq. Well, now the southern underbelly of Russia is exposed. They're fighting this war in Ukraine, so their eastern flank is occupied. Now the southern flank opens up, and the southern flank is, as you know, mostly Muslim, right? And it's very easy for the Americans to embed insurgents, ISIS insurgents, which is basically CIA, to destroy.
He said it. He said it, not me.
The southern flank of Russia. So Iran is an existential crisis for Russia. They have to protect Iran, otherwise they're exposed in the south. China gets a lot of its oil from Iran. Iran exports about 80% of its oil really cheaply to China. Wow. And if Iran were to close out the Strait of Hormuz, then China would lose its oil supply. So China would need to get involved as well. So there are these geopolitical dimensions that really didn't exist during the 2003 Iraq War. Remember, because after the war, because after 9/11, the world was sympathetic towards America. And so when Bush declared war against Iraq, he was able to build a coalition of the willing, right? You had Britain, Tony Blair, heavily involved in the war, and the United Nations was also involved as well in rebuilding Iraq after the war.
It's interesting because America's initial plan was to completely subdue Iraq and then put their military bases in Iraq and then make that military base their Central Command. They would call it Central Command, and then they would call America North Command. And I think that would drastically change the current geopolitical landscape, especially when it comes to Iran, because he said that what you should do is take over, then put in your bases and so on and so forth. And that, I believe, would be a lot more doable if they had Iraq as Central Command. Because even if they couldn't get their bases inside of Iran, they would have an outpost right in its backyard, basically. That, alongside Israel, I think would be a bit too much for Iran to deal with. I think they would still do heavy damage to their Central Command and to Israel, but I wouldn't want to be Iran in that position. They're a lot more safe right now, where America's on the far, far west, and then Israel's there, and then it's a 1-to-1 battle. And let's be real, if Israel and Iran went head to head, they're both very dangerous to each other. Israel has nukes, Iran almost has nukes, and they have crazy ballistic missiles that they've proven can penetrate through Arrow 3 and David Sling and the Iron Dome and all their defense systems. So, and Israel's a lot smaller than Iran is. Let me look up Israel size. It was what, 20,000? Yeah, it's 22,145 square kilometers compared to Iran, which is 1.6 million square kilometers. So you're looking at 22,000 compared to 1.6 million square kilometers. It's a huge difference. So Israel is a much smaller target, and Iran is a much, much larger target. A mountainous environment, and then they have ballistic missiles that come up from the ground, shoot, and go back down under. So very dangerous for both parties.
But with this war in Iran, the United States is basically alone, and it's going to be up against major geopolitical adversaries, including China and Russia. And then problem number 5 is that America is now politically polarized. It's a very divided country. So you can imagine that this war in Iran, then you're going to see massive protests. You know, the entire left is going to be galvanized. And you'll see this massive protests. ICE and Homeland Security will go in. And you're going to have a Vietnam situation where the war can't be won overseas, and then the war is probably going to be lost at home.
Wow.
So I mean, I can go on, but I mean, like, it's a hopeless situation for the American.
I loved your lecture, your comprehensive analysis on war in Iran, because I think most people are predicting that America defeats Iran in a war. But you explained, and again, you reiterated it here, how Iran is a mountainous region, so they're going to have to deploy troops. You speculated around 100,000, and that it would end up being a hostage situation because they wouldn't be able. Iran would not let the troops leave, right? So they have to deploy them by plane, but Iran has good technology in order to shoot down planes.
Drones. All you need is drones, and Iran has prepared for this war, and we know because of the weaponry, right? Where have they focused all the resources? On drones, right, and on ballistic missiles. Which is the ideal situation if you're anticipating an American invasion.
Because America invested heavily, not in ballistic missiles and drones, but heavily into jets. They went the jet route, and then Russia and Iran and China went the drone and ballistic missile route.
Something else.
But China does have some good jets as well.
That I forgot to mention, which is very important, is the religious nature, the religious framework of the Iranians. They're different from other Muslims in that they're Shia Muslims, right? And Shia Muslims, as you know, they believe in eschatology, the 12 imam. They believe in martyrdom. If you go back to the 1980s and you look at
so do Sunnis, just a different type of eschatology.
The Iraq-Iranian war. I mean, like if you just look at the the framework or in the beginning, right? You had the Iraqis who were backed up by both the Soviet Union and Americans. They had advanced helicopters, tanks. And then the Iranians had to destroy their own military. They didn't really have an air force. They had planes. They couldn't actually fix their planes because they got all the materials from the Americans. And so what they did was they just went out in the front lines with their rifles, and they just scared the living shit out of the Iraqis, right? Because these people, the Iranians, they're not afraid to die for their homeland. They're not afraid to die for the religion.
Oh.
They're not equipped to deal with people who have actual religious faith and zealotry in a war.
Sorry, you cut out for a second, but they do. So could you explain the difference in martyrdom? What was your main difference between Shia and Sunni, if you could explain that?
Yeah, so again, I don't know as much about the Islamic faith as you do, okay? But the Shia has always been a minority, a persecuted minority within the larger Islamic faith. Yeah. And yeah, about 10%. They've always been persecuted because they're considered like heretics, right? Because they follow Ali. And
they're not considered heretics for following Imam Ali radiallahu anhu, alayhi salam. They're not considered heretics for that. They're considered heretics for believing that the 12 imams are infallible. And we've heard recent discussions about them believing that the imams can control every atom in the universe, and saying, cursing the Sahaba, A'udhu billah, may Allah protect us and grant us all guidance, Allahumma ameen. They're heretical for many reasons. But the difference initially was a political one that became theological later. They claimed that Ali radiallahu anhu should have been the first Khalifa after the Prophet ﷺ, and the Sunnis believe that it could have been anyone that the ummah voted on. It could have been Abu Bakr, could have been Umar, could have been Uthman, could have been Ali radiallahu anhum. I mean, I consider him an imam, but in the same way that he was the Amir al-Mu'mineen, he was the imam of the believers as well. So I mean, you wanna cherry pick the words I use. I mean, I don't really care, to be honest. But regardless, it could have been any of them: Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Ali, radiallahu anhu, and we just voted on Abu Bakr. That's just what happened. If we voted on Ali, it would have been him first. So I don't know why they made it a point of contention, but they did, and then eventually they split off and created their own theology based on that.
And the way they've been able to survive as a group is cohesion, right? They but also martyrdom, where it's the greatest honor to sacrifice yourself for the cause. And so this is one factor. The other thing about the Iranians is that they're Zoroastrian as well. So even though they are on the surface Islamic, in their hearts, their soul, it's Zoroastrian. And Zoroastrian has always been an eschatological tradition. And this is the Persian Empire. So they have this, belief in eschatology. They have this deep national pride. They have this. These are extremely brave people. The Shia are sort of notorious for the for being fanatics and for being zealots, right?
And they deserve credit for that. Did you see them burn the ball statue 2 or 3 days?
Yeah. And look. I think when they did that, that's to say that we're all in now, okay? If you hit us this time, we're gonna go on. It's not gonna be like last year when you hit us, we'll be like, okay, we don't really fight. It's like now if you hit us, we've made the commitment to go all in. We will fight you to the death.
Right. Yeah, and you definitely, I want to get into faith on later, but there's so much more to talk about geopolitically and your predictions, but you definitely know a lot about Islamic Empire and the differences. And what I really liked about your analysis was the comparison to Zelensky in Ukraine, right? Zelensky is a former television actor, just as Trump. Trump was a reality TV star. So their focus is going to be on optics and appearances, right? And so that's why Trump is probably going to have an invasion in Iran, because it's going to look good on TV.
Also, presidential elections have become more of a popularity contest above anything else. Like, the reason Trump became so popular is because his one-liners against Hillary Clinton.
Zelensky, his grave mistake, and you were completely right about this, was the fact that he was fighting a losing battle. He should have retreated, but he wanted to be on the front lines, and he was wearing the turtleneck and always trying to appear as a good leader. He had hubris, and that was his downfall, was prioritizing his ego rather than the goodness of his country.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, that's the issue with American military doctrine. It's all for the audience back at home, right? So you look at Desert Storm. It was the first TV war, the Persian Gulf War back in 1991. And it's actually what made CNN so powerful, so famous, right? So American military, it's for them, it's like, it's about winning the optics war. And it's a disaster against Iran, because remember, for the past 20 years, America has never really fought an enemy that is willing to fight to the death, right? So when they went into 2003, when they went to Iraq, most of the population had turned against Saddam Hussein anyway. He was very unpopular because of the economic sanctions, because it was a dictatorship. And people really believed that this war was a war of liberation, and that it would bring democracy and economic prosperity to Iraq. But then, of course, we saw what happened. And the people who saw it happen really close up, of course, is the Iranians, because they live next door. And so they know exactly, like, when the Americans come in, it's not to bring democracy. It's not to reinstall the Shah. It's not to get rid of the Islamic theocracy. It's to break up the nation into ethnic enclaves so that it could be divided and ruled. It's to destroy the nation of Iran, which is what they did in Syria and Libya. You go to remember, forget this, but in the 70s and 80s, Libya, Syria, and Iraq, all three of these nations were vibrant middle-class countries. And then because of economic sanctions, because of the Americans, all these nations were destroyed. You go to Libya today, it's no longer a functioning state. You have slave markets in Libya. So the Iranians know this is a war to the death, and they will fight to the death.
Yeah, I want to ask you, so there's two conflicting things going on, right? When it comes to eschatology, what it's stated to create greater Israel, to expand from the Nile to the Euphrates, is that they need to intentionally spread anti-Semitism so that Jews can operate as a monolithic group. But how does that coincide with the fact that they also need support? They need to have people hating Iran and also thinking that the U.S. and Israel are the same country and should work together. How do you spread anti-Semitism while also Netanyahu's paying people $7,000 per post? He's going on the Nelk Boys podcast. How do you spread anti-Semitism but also get support? Because if you don't have that faith that this war is something good. That's probably why the Vietnam War was such a disaster, is that they knew from the jump, which you said in your lecture, that this was a losing battle, but they kept on fighting because the casino effect, right? Once you go into the casino, you can't leave because once you lose, you want to make back your losses. So how are they intentionally spreading anti-Semitism while also gaining support for this war?
I think you just answered it. I mean, they have their geopolitical motives and their eschatological motives as well, perhaps. And at the same time, to achieve those motives, they need to maintain the favorability in the public eye, especially the eye of the Americans. But the rest of the world is very important as well. They're allies as well. So that's why they're paying $7,000. That's why Netanyahu has gone on Nelk Boy's podcast and Patrick Goy podcast and all these podcasts, is because he knows he needs to win the American people over. That's why they're doing all of these campaigns across America and across the world, showing up to UN General Assemblies and just propagating this complete BS for Israel and against the Palestinians. Is because they want to be able to do what they're doing while still being loved. It's obviously not going to work, but I guess they're doing the best with what they have, and they probably just don't perceive a big threat yet. If they did, I think they would probably back off and just go hard on the media, but they're either too deep in, which is the sunken ship theory, which is the whole casino analogy Sneako gave, or they don't see a threat big enough, scary enough to stop.
Right, okay. So this goes back to the founding of Zionism. Okay, so this is Theodore Herzl, and this is the end of the 19th century. And he was trying to create a homeland for the Jews, right? And they're looking at different possibilities, including like, Uganda and in Israel, Palestine. But the problem with Palestine, of course, was that you had Arabs living there already. And so Theodore Herzl was going around promoting this plan. And he was backed by secret societies and by transnational capital. And the problem, of course, is that Jews were like, this is retarded. We're happy in Britain. We're happy in Germany. We're happy in America. Why the hell would we want to go to a desert where everyone's poor and it's just backward? So only about 3% of the entire population of Jews around the world at that time supported the idea of a homeland for Jews, right? Also, there were these religious considerations in that if you do this, if you set up a homeland for the Jews, you're going against the will of God, because Jews believe that they will return to Jerusalem when the Messiah appears. And God will appoint the Messiah to appear. So let's just wait for the Messiah to appear and then we'll go home, okay? So that was the faith of Jews at that time. But then, of course, you had certain events that happened in the 20th century which compelled the Jews to return to Israel and to found the state of Israel. And that, of course, is the Holocaust and World War II. If you look at the history of World War II and the rise of Hitler, well, there's a lot of suspicious activity. Okay, I mean, like I don't want to get into it because I don't want you bad everywhere. Okay, yeah. But yeah, no, I mean but if you look at some of the evidence, the evidence will tell you is that Hitler had every reason to work with the Zionists, right? Because Hitler's ambition was to get rid of the Jews. Mm-hmm. He didn't want to kill the Jews because that would look bad. What he wanted to do was get the Jews and make them leave, right? And then you have the Zionists in Palestine who want the Jews to come to Palestine. So of course they work together. In fact, they have these memos of cooperation where Hitler would send Jews to Palestine.
The Havar agreement.
Exactly. So and these are documents, okay? So the idea of anti-Semitism is not, let's hate Jews. The entire point of anti-Semitism is let's get the Jews to go back to Israel and leave us alone, mm-hmm. right? I mean, the entire message of anti-Semitism is like Jews are only loyal to Israel, and therefore they should go to Israel and leave us alone, mm-hmm. right?
Right. And Germany had such a great economic recovery. I don't know if you're allowed to say this, but it's just factually true that Germany was in an economic disaster after World War I, but after they changed the banks and they kept them private, if I'm not mistaken, and they refused to interact with transnational capital the way that they were before, Germany recovered in a way that Europe had never seen.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Interesting.
Back in the 1930s, Hitler was Times Man of the Year. I mean, he was celebrated throughout the world for restoring the German economy, mainly by nationalizing the German economy, by restoring sovereignty, monetary sovereignty, right? Because before Hitler, most of the German economy was geared towards repaying war debts, reparations. And Germany was being controlled by something called the Bank of International Settlements in Basel, Germany, which is like the central bank of central banks. And in existence, the entire point of the Bank of International Settlements is to force Germany to pay all its resources to other nations. Okay, so Germany was being bled out, and then Hitler promised national rejuvenation. He promised national sovereignty. He didn't want to conquer the world. He just wanted to be left alone, right? I mean, like that was his message. Like, you know, we, the German people, ought to have our own nation, and we ought to rule this nation by ourselves. But because Hitler was destroying transnational capital, because he was kicking out the central banks, right, the Bank of the International Settlements, then the response is to declare war, right? So you make the argument that all Hitler wanted was national sovereignty, but that national sovereignty would disrupt transnational capital, and therefore transnational capital had to conspire to create a war to get rid of him. And look, this is a pattern throughout the 20th century. Like, whenever you try to defy transnational capital, then they go after you. Okay, this is true for every nation, with everyone, right? you look at these nations that have been destroyed by the American military, or the nations that are being targeted by the American military, right? These nations are destroyed, or Libya, Syria, Iraq. They don't have central banks. Countries that are being targeted right now: Venezuela, Iran, North Korea. They don't have central banks either, right?
That's very interesting. I'm going to try and skip a little bit. Hopefully they start talking about Islam before I end the stream, because I'm gonna have to get going soon.
Gold and is that the true Messiah, or is it always predestined? Was it always written that they had a different Messiah than Jesus?
Yeah. So the Messiah is supposed to be from the house of David, and he was supposed to be a prince, and he was supposed to be a war Messiah, a Messiah of war, right? So the Messiah was supposed to come, unite the Jewish people, and overthrow whatever oppressor existed at that time. So at that time in history, it was the Roman Empire. So they really believed that the Messiah would come, unify the Jewish people, and destroy the Roman Empire, and create the Messianic age. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's what the Jewish faith taught back then. It's still what the Jews believe today. They believe that what they're doing in Israel is to force the return of the Messiah, or the coming of the Messiah, right, to lead them into victory, right? The
Antichrist, or in Islam we say the Dajjal, which is the same.
Well, yeah, you know, so for the Jews it's the Messiah, for the Christians it's the Antichrist,
and yes. the Muslims right, too. The idea of the Antichrist is identical in Islam. That we also accept right, Jesus not just as a prophet, but as the Messiah who will return. And what was detailed well was how Judaism has been subverted for empire gain and for political motives, right? Like the Khazarians, who now dominate 80% of the Jewish faith, they had to decide, yep, so the Khazarians, their empire fell, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes.
Okay.
The Mongols destroyed the empire, yes.
The Mongols destroyed.
You start speaking about Islam at 1:26. I'm assuming you mean an hour and 26? If it's true, then good call out. Let's see.
It's meant to confuse you. It's meant to create cognitive dissonance. And when you accept the idea of the Trinity, the idea is that now you open your portal to all sorts of whatever crap propaganda that they want to instill in you as well. And that's why the Holy Trinity is the very basis of the Catholic religion.
Mm-hmm.
So he thinks the Trinity is illogical, which, I mean, you can't blame him for that.
And remember, the weakness you said about Islam was that it was too simple and clear. Which,
come on, what? The weakness in Islam is that it's too simple and clear. Let's hear this out.
It was like that really it struck me, because it's like, that doesn't sound like a weakness. That sounds like if I'm in a job interview, they'd be like, "What are your weaknesses?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm too direct. I'm too simple, and I work too hard." Right. So why would you consider that a weakness?
Well, because we talk to the Frankists. What the Frankists will say is that this is the world of Satan, and so to really rule the world, to really conquer the world, you need to embrace the demonic. You need to be multifaceted. You need to have multiple personalities. You have to, like what you are in the outside has to be different from what you are in the inside. You have to practice depravity. You have to practice manipulation, right? So if you're too simple, you're too direct, that limits your maneuverability in politics.
So what he's saying is you have to play their game. Since they're being deceptive and they're being evil and they're going low, you have to go just as low, if not lower.
Okay. So it's a weakness because people will take advantage of, because being Islam it's all about submission to God. So that in terms of empire, it's a weakness in this world.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
I don't really see the correlation there. Simplicity in theology is not the same as, for example, your limitations in what you're willing to do or not willing to do. Because believing in one God worthy of worship and that that worshiping Him also means that you obey Him, and obeying Him means that you obey the state. I think that is a recipe for, if done right, for unity and for allegiance to God and therefore to the state and for loving the people. And if you have a good leader in Islam, a good leader is the one who loves his people and the people love him. That is a recipe for unity and for prosperity. And we've seen this multiple times throughout history within Islamic empires. So, and this obviously started with the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him himself, alayhi salatu wasalam. So I don't think that is a problem. And that simplicity is definitely a pro and not a con. But simplicity, I don't think simplicity is a word, but I guess more so limitation on what you're willing to do, because these people are willing to bomb and kill everyone, including, like, let's say children. You're not willing to do that as a Muslim. You're going to be outdone by them. That's the discussion. Can you outdo people who are willing to, go that low morally? And that is an interesting question in today's age. I don't think it was as much of a problem back in the day because, you fight with swords and shields and bows and arrows and horses and cavalry and whatever else, right? Today it's different. Today is different. I don't know. I don't know enough about modern war to speak about this. But I would imagine at the end of the day, the force wins. If you have the military force to subdue another country, if you have the economic prosperity and if they're dependent upon you and your economy, then you can sanction them and harm them economically. It really depends. If you have the military might and they don't, you're going to win. Even if they're willing to go lower, if you have the military and the economic might, you're going to win. And I think right now America and Israel has the military and economic might. Whereas a country like Iran, they have the might. They have the might. They don't have the economic side of things. They only do, I think, because of Russia and China and the relationship there. Aside from that, they've been sanctioned by America for like ever. I think Trump lifted the sanctions maybe a year or two ago. I might be mistaken. He could have also put it back. But regardless, the only reason Iran's standing because they have some military might. They would have been done like Libya and Syria and Iraq before them if they didn't. So interesting discussion. But I want to see more so where he goes with it, because I don't think that was sufficient enough to say simplicity is a downside for Islam.
That's right.
What do you disagree at all? I mean, basically, why would you not consider yourself a Muslim?
Interesting question.
So I have issues with the Islamic faith, okay? My major issue is that, and I got a lot of hate for my lecture, okay?
He did, unfortunately.
But I believe that organized religion, it changes over time. So maybe in the beginning, it had certain ideas. But in order to accommodate empire, in order to accommodate politics, it shifted over time to become much more conformist, but become much more static. And I don't like that. Okay, I mean, I mean, my sympathies are toward the connection with God directly, right? So rather have an intermediary telling you what God thinks, well, you should be able to feel God in your heart. Okay, and I mean, like, people have said I'm agnostic, or I'm a Luciferian. I don't know what these terms mean. Okay, but I believe that we're all individuals with the divine spark in us. And so we should be all able to connect directly to.
It's funny, he said, I disagree with Islam and then described Islam. Like, we all have the fitrah in us, which is a divine spark. Not that we are divine, but we have an inclination towards the divine, towards God. And he also mentioned that religions grow to be more static over time to accommodate the running of an empire. But we should be able to connect to God one-on-one. That is literally what Islam is. Actually, Islam is praiseworthy exactly for that reason, because what the Jews did is they made everything about laws and rules and regulations, and they removed the spiritual side of it. They have 1 billion laws, and they removed the spirituality from it. Whereas the Christians removed all the laws, and they become basically secular. They removed all the laws, and all they do is believe that Jesus died for their sins. Islam is the only religion that perfectly encompasses both. You have the allegiance to God, obedience to God, which means that you have to operate within your rightful place within the state. You don't disobey the rulers unless they're going against Islam, obviously, and that you cooperate with the rules and laws, legislation that God has given you. But at the same time, you read the word of God directly. You memorize the word of God directly. You pray directly to God every single day. You can lead in prayer. You can be led in prayer. You can pray by yourself. You can pray in jama'ah. You go to the mosque once a week. You can go and learn and study Islam. We don't hide the Quran from you, like the Bible was hidden from people in Europe during the Dark Ages. So Islam perfectly encompasses the religious side and the legislative side. And that is why I believe it was so successful for so long. And even to this day, why it's a major religion. We don't need to go to a priest. We don't need to go to someone and say, Father, forgive, to a human being, Father, forgive me for I've sinned. You don't need to go confess to a human being. You do tawbah directly to God. And if you were to become a Muslim or even try and be a Muslim for a week or so, you would feel the contentment that Muslims feel when they praise Allah, when they worship Allah, when they read the Quran. So he's saying he disagrees with Islam, and what he really wants is X, Y, and Z, and he just goes on to describe Islam.
God. And we should all be able to exercise our imagination, our intuition.
So the disagreement is the divinity within, because in Islam it's like we don't believe God is within. It's that we worship God because He's divine. Okay, so you think there's divine spark within us?
If you listen, what do you mean by divine spark? If you mean that you are divine or part divine or God is within you, what's your reason for this? What's your evidence for this? Why do you believe it? And does it make sense? And secondly, if conversely, if you mean by that you have a inclination towards God and a desire to connect with God and a wanting to connect with God, or maybe a connection with God, that's basically the fitrah. And Muslims have no disagreement with that.
That's right.
And this is where these conversations need to be more substantive, because it's very easy for someone to say something generic in general, which is, if God wanted to, He would be known. If God wanted us to see Him, He would let us see Him. If God existed, He would do X, Y, and Z. But without getting into the nitty-gritty and allowing things to stay ambiguous, you can't really get anywhere in the conversation. Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. So Jesus is the way. He's not the destination, right? Yes, and we would agree. Jesus is the way. He brings the truth, and He brings what brings you to life, which is eternal life and afterlife. He's not the destination. He's not God. So, and you can say that about all the prophets, by the way. As long as you mean it in the way that I've described, it's not a problem. And that's exactly how Jesus meant it, by the way, because He never claimed to be God.
Okay. Is that not, isn't that similar? Not exactly, but isn't that a lot what the Frankists believe? That's why they sin. That's why they do things, because, sinning is where you get divine power, that's what they believe.
What? That's crazy.
Right. So the Frankists believe that if we're in this world, we should conquer this world and enjoy the pleasures of this world. Okay, so they believe in longevity. They believe in transhumanism. Okay, and this explains why things are happening the way they are. These billionaires, what are they obsessed with? They're obsessed with living forever, right? Transhumanism, and that's a very Frankist mentality. I, on the other hand, believe that our souls are immortal, and this world is just one of many worlds, and we come to this world in order to experience things that we couldn't experience in the astral plane. Okay, because in the astral plane, you're pure force, you're pure energy, right? You can't actually feel pain. You can't have sex. You can't eat any food. So we're here to have these rare, unique experiences that make us more enlightened.
It's so funny because in Islam, we know that you as a person, as a soul, become more or less corrupt based on what you do. And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, successful is the one who purifies his nafs, his soul, his self. And, the one who fails is the one who fails to do so. The one who fails to purify his nafs, his soul. Nafs is yourself, it is your soul, it is, it's beyond just a physical body. It's more of a state, it's more of you as an entity, and we're beyond just the physical, right? We're not hard materialists or physicalists. So we believe in a soul. And when you do good, right, you enlighten and you purify yourself. Actually, zakat, when you give in charity, zakat comes from the word tazakka, which it literally means to purify. So, and that's the same word Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses in that verse where He says, the one who purifies his soul, it has succeeded, and the one who fails to do so has failed. So when you do good, you purify your nafs, and when you do bad, you actually what's it called? Corrupt your own soul. You corrupt your own nafs. And so what these people are doing is the exact opposite. They're saying we need to do all these disgusting, inhumane, nasty things. And they say it brings about goodness, but in reality, it just further destroys their own nafs and their own soul. And this seems to be a way how for shaitan to get within the hearts of people and to ruin them and to get them to further corrupt people. And this is why it's important to recite ruqya on yourself and to recite Surah An-Nas, because it says, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ مَلَكِ النَّاسِ إِلَهِ النَّاسِ. Say, I seek refuge in the Lord of mankind, the King of mankind, and the God of mankind. من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس. Basically from the one who whispers to like the souls of the human being. And then it says من الجنة والناس, from the jinn, from like the shayateen of the jinn, and from mankind as well. Because you can have people like Epstein who are like a shaitan. They act like shayateen. They don't like the good. They want to defile the sanctity of Islam and of the Muslims and of the Kaaba, and they want to spread evil and corruption and things that will corrupt the world and corrupt people's souls. So it's funny that all the demonic stuff is just like anti-Islam. But with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and end it off. We've been live for an hour and 15 minutes. I thought it was a lot longer, to be honest. But regardless, I think it was a very interesting episode. If you guys want me to watch more of Dr. Jiang's content, let me know. Send me some stuff. Leave it in the comment section if you're allowed to leave links in the comments. If not, then just DM them to me on Instagram. And with that being said, I'll see you on the next one. Allahumma atina fid dunya hasana wa fil akhirati hasana wa qina adhab an-nar. Ramadan Mubarak, and may Allah accept all our fast. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.